Hello, and welcome to a special episode of Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Shults. Well, my little podcast has reached episode number 60, and that's something to celebrate. A while ago, I got a fortune cookie that said, "You need a new environment. Go on vacation." True story. So I said to myself, where could I go that's a place I've never been before? At that point, the possibilities were endless. But I decided to visit my sister in Las Vegas. And once I decided that, I knew I couldn't pass up the chance to go on a ghost tour. Of course, I didn't know if Las Vegas even had any ghost tours, but I went online to find out. And I struck gold. Spooky Steve has had years of experience both in paranormal investigation and in leading haunted tours. He has previously led tours in the famously haunted town of Savannah, Georgia. In October of 2017, he moved to Las Vegas to bring the spooky to Sin City, and he does a fabulous job. Come explore the darker side of Las Vegas with me as we go Lights Out. My sister Miri and I met up with Spooky Steve at a bar on the Vegas Strip. We followed him out to the garden area of the bar, where he started off by giving us a little background on what was here in the desert before all the neon. Okay, we are rolling.
All right, ladies, welcome to Las Vegas. I've come up with a new catchphrase. Not Viva Las Vegas. Viva Ghost Vegas. Yeah.
Okay.
What we're dealing with here is a city that has been built and rebuilt and plowed under and paved over numerous times in 71 years. We're basically around the strip going into about our third or fourth demolition and rebuilding of all these places.
Wow.
So we have distinct historical periods that are recognizable to the strip and to Las Vegas as a whole. People have been residing in this Mojave Desert hotspot for 6,000 years. You see, it just doesn't go back to cowboys that that died here, or mobsters, or just regular people. It goes all the way back 6,000 years to the Paiute Indians.
Okay.
The Paiutes are a tribe that inhabit all of Nevada, but particularly up near Lake Tahoe and the California-Nevada border, and down south here. The ones down south here are more related to different other tribes in other states, but distinctly Paiute. They are the ones that invented the famous ghost dance. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
The ghost dance was created by a native/Christian visionary shaman named Jack Wilson Wovoka was his Indian name. Jack Wilson, his Christian given name. And this was during a time where all the white settlers were starting to come this way, and as they went, as you know, they destroyed the Indian tribes. They killed them, they resettled them, they took their land, they killed their game, women, on and on and on. So, at one point, the Indian tribes that were left on the Great Plains west started to lose hope. They were fearful that they would never again have sovereignty to their own tribal lands. And so, Jack Wilson Wovoka created a ghost dance. He had a vision that came to him that Jesus would, if tribes danced all day and all night for 5 straight nights until they practically dropped, this would allow Jesus to take all the white men up out of here, would regain their lands, and would regain all the game that was killed to support the white man's appetites and hunger as they went along. For instance, the buffalo, etc. So the tribe spread it. The ghost dance spread out to the Shoshones and the Lakota and the Navajo and the Hopis and all those people. And the U.S. Army and the U.S. government considered a threat because it gave additional hope and sustenance to their fighting spirits, that they would one day regain their lands and their animals and etc., their ancestral burial grounds, whatever. Then the Little Bighorn happened. George Custer and his U.S. troops were massacred by the Indians out in Montana. And so the U.S. Army at that point afterwards was looking and chomping at the bit for revenge. And what they did was they found out that the Lakota and the Shoshone were having a big giant ghost dance.
I did it one time.
At Wounded Knee. Famous Wounded Knee. And at that point, the U.S. Army snuck up on the Indians and killed them all with Gatling guns and cannons. Left, some say as little as 300, some say 2,500 men, women, children, grandmas, grandpas, as bloody spots in the snow. They killed them all. At that point, it is historically known that that ends all hopes of Indian sovereignty. At that point, almost no tribes had any hope of regaining their sovereignty. Gone. They were then all rounded up, taken to reservations, killed, starved, diseases, etc. So we see here in this first period of the Mojave Desert area the spirits of the Indians, of the Native Americans. And they had a particular spirit, and I'm sure you're familiar with shapeshifters, known as skin walkers.
Yes.
And these are shapeshifters that can do a number of things. They can be good, but they can also be bad. And so we have reports here, and I think I've seen one. You will see on the strip, out of nowhere, in the middle of this sea of humanity, a wisp of swirling smoke mist that comes up into the air, and some say a wolf's face or a man with a wolf's face mask on is known to appear in that and cause people to panic because it comes out of nowhere. And sometimes they even do nefarious things to people, such as push them out into the road in front of a car and things like that. Fortunately, most spirits in Las Vegas are benevolent. They're not malevolent. They're not malicious. Of course, the demons are, which we'll be going into later.
Okay.
So, you have the Indian spirits. Then you have the period where the Mormons came through.
Oh.
The Mormons settled Las Vegas. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Before they even went up into Utah. And then they were chased out by the U.S. Army and went up north and escaped and created Utah land, Mormon land. Okay? Then you have all the gold rush. Once gold was discovered in California, they tried in Nevada too, and all these people were coming either from the east or some even from the west to mine and to gain wealth. As you know, Nevada is called the Silver State.
I was just going to ask about that. Was it silver rather than gold?
Gigantic loads,
Okay.
what they called a load of silver and gold, were found here right after the Civil War, going into the 1900s, to the tune of thousands, millions of tons. It made vast fortunes for everybody. So following in there were the miners, the prospectors, the cowboys, the scam artists, the thieves, and of course, the prostitutes. There are whole areas of old Vegas that away that were whole blocks of bordellos. And they didn't call them whorehouses or bordellos here. They called them bouncy houses. I wonder why. So you had all of that, and during that time, in the early the late 1800s, early 1900s, gambling became legal in Nevada. And here we had sawdust joints. They were like what you see on the movies with those ramshackle like saloons with cowboys going yee-haw and shooting the ceiling and grabbing women, in long petticoats or whatever. And there was cow crap on the floor. It was a real scene here. It was just a bunch of yokels, local yokels. Then the railroad came through. And the railroad established a convenient east-west, west-east type of access. So many people were coming in here. And what comes in then? The Hoover Dam.
Oh, okay.
Hoover Dam, not too far away. And all of those workers would come here and spend all of their money on bouncy houses, bouncing around the bouncy houses, and gambling. So then gambling became illegal for quite a long time during, but Prohibition made Nevada and a bunch of other states financially insolvent. So they said, we need this money. So they legalized it in 1931. Okay. A couple of people, two people from LA, then came in along with a local sheriff here and established like the first three places, the Cortez, the El Rancho, and the Meadowlands.
Then we strolled a little farther into the garden, ending up in front of the Bugsy Siegel monument.
1931, Hoover Dam. Well, the Mafia, the New York Mafia, and the Chicago outfit were already ensconced in Cuba. Here, they had a friendly government in a nation 90 miles away from Miami that, through bribes, allowed gambling and all sorts of prostitution and loan sharking, etc. So then, a man named Bugsy Siegel, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, was sent by the New York mob, Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky, to LA to start controlling the unions, which would then give them control over the movie theater studios. In other words, when you control the union, if they don't pay you extortion money, you then have the union strike, and no work gets done, and all those Hollywood movies that depend upon budgets and time schedules are ruined, and they lose hundreds of millions or millions of dollars in those days. So he went out there, started extorting them, and also established a wire service out there. Wire services were used to get news about gambling, horse races, whatever, from, let's say, Santa Anita Racetrack in LA to the bookies in New York. You had to pay for that. So Bugsy was pulling down $300,000 a month from that alone. Bugsy Siegel was a founding member of Murder Incorporated, which was a group of mafioso hitmen that you would come and you would say, hey, I need somebody bumped off. Here's their picture, this is where they're going to be, and you pay them, and they would kill them for you. Bugsy was also an interesting character, one of the most interesting characters in mob history. For instance, he was involved with an Italian countess at one time, and she took him over to Italy to meet Mussolini and to sell them a new type of explosive called atomite. Similar to dynamite, but supposedly much more powerful. So they bring some over with them, have it shipped, and they put on a demonstration for Mussolini and the Nazis. It didn't explode. It dudded out. No business for Bugsy and the Countess. However, Bugsy, when he was there, remember he was Jewish, he came across the number 2 and number 3 in the Nazi regime, Joseph Goebbels and Hermann Goering. And he told the Countess, I'm going to kill them right now. And she begged him and pleaded, and he did not, and he always said that he regretted not killing them. It could have changed world history.
Wow.
Bugsy Siegel, then on a trip coming from LA, going back to New York, comes through this little dinky straw cow crap on the floor town in the middle of the Mojave Desert named Las Vegas, which means the meadows, by the way, in Spanish. So he sees that all these workers from the Hoover Dam are coming in here, so he goes, oh man, I can make a lot of money off of them. He buys into the El Cortez a little bit, but then he notices this 1/4, not even a quarter completed hotel casino by Billy Wilkerson sitting in the sun, finds out Billy Wilkerson was a degenerate gambler and who lost all the rest of the money that he needed to complete the Flamingo, well, this hotel. So Bugsy comes in and goes, okay. Pays him off, leaves him in, but then shoves him out and just pushes him out. Bugsy Siegel now owns this hotel. His girlfriend, Virginia Hill.
This hotel?
Not this one. I mean, this is the Flamingo, but You'll see. I'll connect it all for you.
Thank you.
Sylvia. So.
I'm just eating up this history.
Oh, yeah. And then we're going to get it right soon. We're going to get into the ghost.
Okay.
So, I'm setting the stage for you. So, Bugsy buys it and then convinces Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, and Meyer Lansky, the kingpins of international mobster land, to give him $1 million to finish out this hotel. So, they give him $1 million. He then has a relationship with a woman named Virginia Hill. Bugsy Siegel also used to own part of Hialeah Racetrack in Miami, Florida, which was, you see in The Godfather. In the beginning of The Godfather, they drive through the old Hialeah Racetrack. It had flamingos from Cuba in the middle of the racetrack. And Virginia Hill had very long legs. So he named this hotel after the flamingos for Virginia Hill and called her the Flamingo.
Nice.
That is how this whole thing got its name.
Oh, cool.
So he starts building it out. 1 million becomes 2 million. 2 million becomes 3, then 4, then 5, and finally $6 million he got them to loan him, even though they were super pissed and suspected him of thieving them. I mean, he was a thief and he was borrowing from thieves. So they know a thief when they see one and when something's happening. So at that point, he finishes it out. About half of the rooms were ready. And he was rushed. He was getting pressure, feeling the heat. So he had opening night on a night, unfortunately, where it's one of those rare rainy nights in Vegas. It does not rain here very much. And none of the Hollywood stars that he was friends with made it. Only a bunch of local yokels came out, and they lost $250,000 more that night. Remember, this is 1946. That's still a lot of money, not to mention the $6 million. So they close it, and a month and a half later, everything's finished. They reopen. The first couple of nights they made some decent money, but the mob had lost control, had lost patience with Bugsy. So he went on vacation to his Virginia Hills and his house in Beverly Hills, and they sent a hitman with an M1 carbine, put it right on the ledge, looked at Bugsy in the living room reading the paper on the couch, and shot his eyes out. It was called in The Godfather the Mo Green method, where they shoot you in the eye. His eyes were found in the corners of the room. They literally was so explosive that his eyes left his body.
Wow.
So ended Bugsy Siegel. So Bugsy's spirit is known along with Virginia Hill. Let me show you Virginia. Virginia was quite a character. She was called of Senate investigative committees, which there she is incredulous as they're questioning her. She denied everything. She had legs like a flamingo, but she was just as greedy and just as vicious and just as much of a robber, ruthless as the men in her days. She was used as a courier, everything. Now, Virginia also got in trouble afterwards. This is a wanted poster of her from the IRS. In those days, wanted for federal income tax evasion.
Wow.
She split to Switzerland with all that money was that she stole with Bugsy. Of course, Bugsy got his eyes shot out and killed.
Ugh.
So then, she even made...
So why didn't they kill her?
We don't know. We don't know because she had a lot of dope on people. She had a lot of inside information, and I don't know. I guess they figured Bugsy was enough. They didn't like to really kill. Okay, those are bats.
Are they bats?
Yes. The other night I had a group of 10. We were followed everywhere by bats. Everywhere. They literally started here and followed us throughout the entire tour. I am not kidding. So here's Virginia. She became larger than life. This is True Detective magazine. Remember those?
Yeah.
And look at that. The Secret Files of Virginia Hill. She made the front cover.
Wow.
Yes. And also when Bugsy was killed, it made all the frontline newspapers everywhere in the United States.
Oh my.
All right. Now, Bugsy, let's see here. Here's another picture of him. Real dashing boy.
Oh my.
Maybe they didn't kill her because she was a woman. You know, they figured she wasn't a huge threat.
They tried. These days, they kill him.
Right.
But in those days, it was like the last resort to kill a woman,
Right.
a police officer, a politician, a newspaper man. Those people were off limits. And people's children's and wives. Big mistake.
there might
If
have
you were a
been a little bit of
mafia,
a thing.
if you were a mafia and had an affair with another mafia's wife, instant death sentence. So, Virginia and Bugsy, notice I'm not dead from calling him Bugsy yet, are known to haunt numerous places in the hotel, all over the hotel, including in the casino. People have actually seen a spirit sitting at a table in a dapper suit with a handkerchief, slicked back hair that they said somewhat resembles Bugsy, and with a beautiful long-legged woman next to him. This was Bugsy's all, ladies. This was his dearest dream. He wanted to invent a new way to recreate yourself. In other words, all these mafia guys were looking for a new way to launder their money and launder their lives. And he is also known to haunt that pool we were at, where we started, and this particular monument, and this wedding chapel, and this area. So I am now going to show you what we caught. Okay. Now, as you well know, being a paranormalist, you know that on a night like this, where it's not freezing cold, if you come out here and all of a sudden you start feeling Canadian Arctic air type coldness on you, the first thing I always do here is I feel this. Okay, it's cold, but not anywhere near as what you're about to see. Okay, this indicates what, usually?
Presence of paranormal energy.
Correct. Now, you'll see me going down, and I could not even go anything but that because it was so frozen, like what do they call that? The ice.
Oh, nitrogen.
What do they call that?
Dry ice.
Dry ice.
Yeah.
That I was afraid that my flesh would stick.
Oh.
So you see me patting down and going, oh wow. And even colder was down here. They have to replant these flowers, as you can see, just about every couple of days, because these spirits are making this so cold. Then, in the middle of the film, we see this smoky entity come through a number of times right here. Then I start getting poked in the back by ice cold pokes, fingers like that.
Whoa.
And then all of these lights here, these lights on the steps and the lights on that palm tree start blinking.
We did take a bit of a detour into the weird right after leaving Bugsy's statue.
I'm gonna step away. Yeah, we do have demonic activity in various places around the city, and I'm going to tell you all about them. But one of them is here, and we don't know if it's Bugsy. We don't know it's because of all the evil that went down here, the murders, all of that type of stuff. But I will tell you this: they're here, and there's no doubt about it whatsoever. And we're leaving Bugsy's memorial. We come out here, and we hear growling. It stops. The next thing you know, right before our eyes, hooved footprints start showing up with some sort of ectoplasm around them, directly straight ahead down the sidewalk to the round tree and disappear into the bushes. And this is as we track them, right there. Look at the hooves. You don't believe me? Look at the hooves. Those are hooves.
They're not human footprints, that's
They
for
surely
sure.
are not. And there is no cows and pigs here in the Flamingo. And they just disappear right down the lane, directly into the bushes by that round tree. We did not hear the growling again. They did not show up again. But
Did anyone touch any of the...
No, I did, actually, but I wouldn't let them.
Okay.
I did, and it was sticky and gooey. Had I been able to have a pen knife or some other equipment, I would have tried to scrape it and put it into a little plastic bag and have it analyzed. If it happens again, I have a pocket knife with me now. You can fool me once. You can't fool me twice. There's these spirits. So I have a pocket knife. I have a little plastic bag with me when I do these tours. But the people on the tour were so absolutely terrified hearing those growls. It sounded like this. And then the footprints.
Good heavens.
It's there. So we are dealing with demonic activity around Las Vegas Strip, including here. So, Going 2 miles down that way, coming this way, all the way to the back of this hotel is the Vegas Wash. I don't know if you guys know, but in the West, they dig out channels, long channels, that are used to enable them to control massive flooding. Because it doesn't rain here, and every once in a while it pours like hell, and the soil is hard, so it doesn't soak in, and it just flash floods. So, in that Vegas Wash, historically it would control the water, but now, in modern times, underneath this part right here, going back about, I don't know, half a mile that way, is a underground city of homeless.
Oh.
They live underneath. They're underneath you right now. And they will occasionally come up for supplies or whatever. There, folks, when that rain comes through there, every year between 4 to 10 homeless people are caught unawares, and they are drowned in the floods. And they come up and land right here in front of this hotel, dead, mangled bodies, and in the parking lot and back. So their spirits are known to be here. This has been happening for decades now. So sometimes we can see right up there shadow people walking around under the lights. They disappear very quickly. They show up. I got to make sure, everybody's eye level is here. But I try to get them to look up there because occasionally we do see stuff. And also they will once again walk around here as these transparent, very transparent type of apparitions, where you'll see a bunch of people walking down here, or sometimes a bunch of people walking from here, and they look they look like real people, but they're transparent and they disappear very quickly. They're all around us now. Now underneath there, I have actually gone down there with my revolver and a couple of friends, just in case. And we have talked with some of the homeless people. There's a guy down there that's like the king of the homeless. And I talked with him. He wouldn't allow me to film, of course. But he tells us that there's a spirit down there called the Black Man. And it is a large, 7 foot, approximately tall shadow person, but this time with glowing red eyes and horns. As you know, shadow people are usually flat black specters that you cannot tell man from females or young from old. It's just a flat black shadow. No beard, no lips, no ears, no eyes, no hair, nothing, just flat black. He tells me that a number of the homeless are killed in the middle of the night down there by the Black Man. That he will come out of nowhere, even come out of the walls, grab somebody that's walking down there where there's nobody around, take them, kill them, and leave them mangled down there. Completely disemboweled, the whole schmear. Isn't that a lovely fact, Miriam?
It's pretty grim. It's grim.
So, going 2 miles down that way, coming this way, all the way to the back of this hotel is the Vegas Wash. I don't know if you guys know, but in the West, they dig out channels, long channels, that are used to enable them to control massive flooding. Because it doesn't rain here, and every once in a while it pours like hell, and the soil is hard, so it doesn't soak in, and it just flash floods. So, in that Vegas Wash, historically it would control the water, but now, in modern times, underneath this part right here, going back about, I don't know, half a mile that way, is a underground city of homeless. They live underneath. They're underneath you right now. And they will occasionally come up for supplies or whatever. There, folks, when that rain comes through there, every year between 4 to 10 homeless people are caught unawares, and they are drowned in the floods. And they come up and land right here in front of this hotel, dead, mangled bodies, and in the parking lot and back. So their spirits are known to be here. This has been happening for decades now. So sometimes we can see right up there shadow people walking around under the lights. They disappear very quickly. They show up. I got to make sure, everybody's eye level is here. But I try to get them to look up there because occasionally we do see stuff. And also they will once again walk around here as these transparent, very transparent type of apparitions, where you'll see a bunch of people walking down here, or sometimes a bunch of people walking from here, and they look they look like real people, but they're transparent and they disappear very quickly. They're all around us now. Now underneath there, I have actually gone down there with my revolver and a couple of friends, just in case. And we have talked with some of the homeless people. There's a guy down there that's like the king of the homeless, and I talked with him. He wouldn't allow me to film, of course, but he tells us that there's a spirit down there called the Black Man, and it is a large, 7 foot, approximately tall shadow person but this time with glowing red eyes and horns. As you know, shadow people are usually flat black specters that you cannot tell man from females or young from old. It's just a flat black shadow. No beard, no lips, no ears, no eyes, no hair, nothing, just flat black. He tells me that a number of the homeless are killed in the middle of the night down there by the Black Man. That he will come out of nowhere, even come out of the walls, grab somebody that's walking down there where there's nobody around, take them, kill them, and leave them mangled down there. Completely disemboweled, the whole schmear. Isn't that a lovely fact, Miriam?
It's pretty grim. It's grim.
Can you say this for me? You say, yeah. Excellent! You are Spooky Steve. Both you girls are Spooky Steve material.
Okay.
Let's pull over. All right. Now, here we have Caesar's Palace Complex. Sorry. And next to that is the Bellagio. See it on the side there, right on the side of Caesar's, that same colored building right there with the magnificent fountains is the Bellagio. And I want to tell you about this area because it connects with what we've been discussing earlier. The Bellagio was the Dunes. The Dunes was mob from beginning to end. It was created by the mob, for the mob, by the mob. It was just totally mobbed up. Now, if you remember the famous fountains in front of the Bellagio, where people come from all over the world to see it, that is where the Dunes fit, in the fountain. The whole Dunes complex was as big as the fountain. Now look at it.
Wow.
It is known that many people have committed suicide. Now I want to tell you this. This is a grim reality. We have 44 to 46 million tourists every year that come to Las Vegas. More than whole countries, right? Some countries, right? Of that 44 to 46 million, between 16 to 1,800 never make it out of Vegas alive. They die of natural causes. They die of unexplained accidents. They die of murders and suicides. Las Vegas is the suicide capital of the United States by far. People come here, hundreds of people every year, with the sole intention of offing themselves. And people say, well, why is that, Spooky Steve? Well, I can tell you why. I know. First of all, they've interviewed a bunch of people that tried suicide that just got horribly injured and recovered. And they asked, why did you come to Vegas to commit suicide? They wanted to spare their relatives back home in Indiana or Illinois the trouble and the grief of their family discovering their bodies with their brains blown out or thrown off a building and all crushed or whatever. Number two, they feel that this is an excellent place to come to spend what little money they have left, gamble for a few days, get some bouncy house action going and all that stuff, eat, drink, and then go out with a bang. Now you will see the Bellagio is the scene of many, many, many suicides and murders. The actor Justin Pierce killed himself in 2008 in there, hung himself in the room, just like the guy from Lincoln Park and Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, whatever.
Yeah.
He did that in there. Also, it is known that at least 38 people, from my internal sources, have offed themselves in that hotel. Not to mention to the fact that right to the other side of it, between that and the Cosmopolitan, was the Dunes, famous Dunes golf course. And many, many people were buried by the mafia right there in their own convenient little next-door golf course / graveyard.
Oh!
So the whole place is haunted as hell. It is known in the dunes and then in the Bellagio that the walls have blue ice signatures. In other words, you walk down a hallway, all of a sudden you feel freezing, and you look, and there's glowing blue coldness coming from the walls. There's been ghost spottings, spirit spottings, and all of that. But then, see the Cosmopolitan right next to them. Notice that is one of the few buildings in Vegas that still has balconies. And there is a reason for this, ladies. People have been known to jump from balconies all over. So now almost none of the places have balconies. That place, the Cosmopolitan, has been the scene of at least 10 to 11 people, maybe even more, that have jumped off those balconies and committed suicide.
As we walked along the Strip, we got a sneak peek at the secrets of Vegas hotels.
Now remember, they don't want you to know anything here. I was saying about these hotels where there's massive suicides, they are particularly adept in dealing with this. Number one, if somebody offs themselves in a hotel room or dies of natural causes, like has a heart attack in bed and they wake up dead, whatever, they will take that person when they discover it. They'll put them on a stretcher, like an ambulance stretcher, and even though they're dead, they'll put oxygen masks on them as if they're still alive.
Slick.
And they take them down these hidden hallways in the hotels where the room service comes and the sheets and stuff like that. They take them down, freight elevator, and take them somewhere on the property. And then they call the police. Because, number one, they don't want anybody to know that this happens in their hotels. Number two, if they report it when they're still there, the bodies are still in the hotels, then unfortunately, the police will quarantine the room for up to a month, and that means lost business. Okay? So a lot of things here are not reported. It takes somebody like Spooky Steve going in there and pumping hands and trying to convince people that this is important information that Spooky Steve needs to know. So here, I've been talking to a couple of the security guards here, and they were telling me a little bit less than a year ago, some idiot from Iowa or something got extremely drunk and then lost all his money, including his kid's college fund.
Oh no.
And he made it up to the top, somehow undetected, of that McDonald's sign, somehow scrambled up, got into the middle, and did a header right here, right where that guy's walking right there. And splatted down in the middle of the night. They were out here just like they do in the hotels. In the hotels, when they discover this, a suicide or a death, they have, within 5 minutes of the reporting of that death, they have squads of men in hazmat suits that come in like a troop of army, like an army troop, and they clean everything up. They take the bloody bed or they clean the brains up off the floors.
Yeah.
Completely disinfect the place in hazmat suits and then get out, and later that night, somebody is checking into that hotel room.
Oh.
So you figure.
Ew.
Yes, so here...
laundry to be done.
Yes.
A little later on, our history tour moved along, from the gangster days of Bugsy Siegel to the Rat Pack and the birth of Cool.
Where we are now is the home of the original Sands Hotel, the most famous hotel ever in Las Vegas. Totally iconic statue. They are the ones that brought the birth of Cool to Las Vegas, and I mean cool, the real thing. It is here. It was built in 1952, and Frank Sinatra performed his first concerts here in 1953. First ones here in Vegas, and actually second one, and he became known as a person that only came here to the Sands for periods of 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 3-4 times a year. When he came to Las Vegas, to the Sands, this place was so cool and respected around the world. Thousands of people came from all over the world just to see Frank Sinatra. He brought in more business than anybody ever has, even more than Elvis.
Wow.
Elvis is in second place. So, here you would get it. Remember I was telling you about your car with the wings and the black Cadillac and tuxedos and you beautiful ladies in your gowns with your hair all done up like in bouffants and all that stuff. Oh, I love that stuff. And so you could come here to see Frank Sinatra at the Copa Room, named after the Copa Cabana in New York City. They even had the entertainment manager from the Copa, Jack Entratter. They brought him here.
Cool.
So then you could see that show with a filet mignon or lobster dinner for $6. Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack. Then later, the Rat Pack came here. Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, all of this. Now, the Copa Room was in this general area, running up these escalators right up on top.
Oh.
Yes, the Copa Room was right.
Madame Tussauds Wax Museum is located where the famous Sands Hotel used to stand. With being situated on such an iconic site, the museum itself is host to a lot of paranormal activity.
And it is known to be extremely haunted for a multitude of reasons. Many people died at the Sands. The Sands also had its own golf course running this way. And I have talked to many a person, old timers, that came out to the golf courses in the early days late at night to make out with chicks and have little bonfires and parties on the golf course late at night. They tell me stories of men in suits with hats, looking very much the mafia type, coming. Now they would be partying, these people I talked to, in one of those sand traps of the golf course, so they couldn't be seen, but they would hear stuff, and they'd keep their heads up out of the golf trap, the trap there, and they would see men looking mafia, one on the feet, one on the head, with bodies wrapped up in plastic, and they thought they saw them burying them there, and shovels, etc. So this whole area. Now, because of this, now, right where those people are standing, I see they just in the last day took Johnny Depp. They used to have Johnny Depp sitting right there. And it is known, we've actually seen it, unaware that it was ever going to happen, because I had never heard the story, that he actually looked at the ladies, went up close, like where they are, that were in my tour, and he actually, they said he reached his hand out like that as if to touch them, a wax figure. Also, this particular transformer,
Iron Man.
feel this. This is tons of real steel.
Yeah.
Tons. It is known sometimes that hand, like that, it's like this now. Sometimes it'll come slowly out like that and then go back down. And that foot has been known. I've actually seen it lift off. Just lift a little bit off the ground and stomp back down. This is at 4 o'clock in the morning. So Mr. Pitt here is in there. And I originally came in here to introduce myself. They let me in, and we were talking, and I happened to turn around and I saw shadows. I thought that's somebody walking down the hall. Well, one of the shadows then comes out of Brad Pitt's wax sculpture and starts running around the room like this, literally on the walls, just like the shadow going, and then like less than a minute's time, right back into Brad Pitt. So
Spooky Steve shared some personal experiences with us, specifically experiences he had in the Mirage Hotel.
Mission to get this ghost, because he's a son of a gun. He is a prankster. At the bottom of the steps of the theater, going up like this, right over here, in front of his theater, which is now the Terry Fallon Theater, because Danny Gans died, are 2 restaurants, man and female. It is known that in those bathrooms, these ghosts play terrible jokes on you, especially somebody like me that knows what he's talking about. And they will turn the faucets of the sink on, off, while you're there, and flush the toilets and blink the lights in the restroom. So the rows of sinks are like this. You walk through here, there's a row of sinks here, there's a row of sinks here. Then you walk down a little further, and there's rows of toilet stalls. So I go in there knowing what's happening. I have the camera ready, and I'm looking at this one here. It's sinks getting, I have to look at one. I can't look at both, So I'm ready. Next thing you know, the ones in back of me start turning on. I'm like this, and then it stops, and those turn on. So the ghost has me going like this, literally like a puppet going. Oh God! So I try to get the camera out. He finished. He stops. Then we. Well, don't worry, I'm going to get his ass. So then, down a little further where the toilet stalls are, they start flushing. Bing, 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 doing the same thing to me. I was going like this. Stops. So he had me like an idiot, like a puppet. It pisses me off. I don't like things manipulating me.
Yeah.
So then, the next thing you know, all the light starts flashing. Real quick, off. Sinks one or two more times. Done. So I go in there at least once a week now, late at night when there's no crowds. Because if we try to take you in there now, that's when the show's happening. We get kicked out.
Yeah.
So I made it my mission to get this bastard. He died at age 39 of an overdose of Dilaudid, which is a heroin synthetic opiate. Not because he was a junkie, but because he had some sort of condition and it made his heart stop.
Yeah.
So he died at an early age. He's known to heart attack.
Now,
So
is this the Mirage that he
that's
owns?
the Mirage.
Okay.
And then there's also reviews on TripAdvisor, as well as for the Treasure Island. Both Mirage, Treasure Island, and the Bellagio were all built by Steve Wynn.
Okay.
He owns none of them. He said he just went on to other things, and you're about to see what he owns now. It's incredible. So, the Treasure Island and the Mirage, you can actually see on TripAdvisor reviews of people that stayed there, where, for instance, in the Treasure Island, a lady talks about checking in. She sits down to put her slippers on the bed. Next thing you know, she feels somebody sitting down in the bed next to her and sees a butt imprint as they sit down on the bed. Next thing you know, she starts hearing meows and feels like pitter-patter on the bed and sees little teeny paw imprints on the bed of a cat, ghost cat. And we have no idea where this is coming from. So this is going to be one of the things. I have so much. So we talked about those. Here, in this hallway here, I have not yet seen, but many, many, many insiders, like that maintenance guy there, talk about how they'll be standing somewhere or doing some work here, and they'll look down and there's a bunch of people coming, and in between those people are spirits that then disappear. They have mentioned seeing spirits in not top hat, but Frank Sinatra style hats. Fedoras with the ties and everything, in suits, fighting. Others have seen people drinking, literally whooping it up. Now,
Then it was on to the Win, where we learned even more about the glamour of Ava Gardner and the bitter rivalry between Frank Sinatra and Howard Hughes, a rivalry that continues to have ghostly repercussions to this day.
Now we're going to talk about ghosts that clash. Here at Steve Wynn's Wynn, this was the site of the Desert Inn. Frank Sinatra played his first gig in Las Vegas here in 1952, but in 1953 he moved over to the Sands. Frank Sinatra and Howard Hughes were bitter enemies, ladies. Bitter. In case you don't know your history on this, which most people don't, I had to read it myself. Howard Hughes had a very intense relationship with Ava Gardner in the late 40s. And she couldn't take it. He was too eccentric, and they broke up, but he always loved her. He always wanted her. He always craved her. And then she ran off with Frank Sinatra and became, as in fact Wikipedia says, that she considers Frank Sinatra the love of her life. Okay, they still remain friends after they divorced. So, whenever Frank Sinatra would come to the Sands or here, Howard Hughes would become annoyed. Now, if you remember, Howard Hughes at that time turned into a germaphobe type reclusive hermit who would tape every possible airflow into his rooms. No maids were allowed in to clean. And it turns out that all of his business was done under the door of his hotel rooms with Robert Mayhew, his assistant, who went on to work for Nixon, or over the phone. So whenever Frank Sinatra came into town, he became extremely annoyed. And he then, to get back at Frank Sinatra, he limited the amount of money that he could gamble every night. Before, Sinatra would come in and gamble as much as he wanted, and then he would keep his winnings, but if he lost, he would take his IOUs and tear them up. And they let him do it because he was so good for business. Howard Hughes was having none of that. None of it. So, he he put a limit on Sinatra for $3,000 a night. Then problems happened. One night, Frank Sinatra's latest wife, Mia Farrow, lost 20 grand in 10 minutes at the tables. And he got pissed and he bought 50,000 worth of chips and lost that in 5 minutes or 6 minutes. And he wanted more, and they said no. So Howard Hughes put a limit of 3,000 a night. Sinatra went on a week-long rampage. He yelled and screamed at the help. He rode a golf course directly through the lobby windows out into the street, crashed through them, and punched the manager of the Sands, a guy named Cohen, who was fairly big, right in the face, and Cohen hit him back and knocked 2 of Frank Sinatra's teeth out. So Howard Hughes and Frank Sinatra were mortal, bitter enemies. And so we see them clash here and at the Sands. There have been reports of Sinatra's behatted figure struggling with a man that looked like a decrepit hermit with a white hair and white beard. That is definitely Howard Hughes. They're fighting, literally, in spirits and yelling and screaming at each other. But then here, my sources, which are, by the way, highly placed individuals in this organization, have told me a couple of things. Before they imploded the Desert Inn, after they bought it from Howard Hughes, Steve Wynn used those top 2 floors for paperwork and as a storage place. And the people that told me this are highly placed, and they had their offices right below those 2 floors. They would hear things. But then they would also go up to get paperwork, former files or whatever, and they got creeped out and scared out by ghosts. So at that point, they would never go up there alone. Only in 2s and 3s and with armed security. Now, of course, we all know that you cannot hurt a ghost or a spirit with a gun or a knife. If you shoot a spirit, it's going to go right through and destroy something. So you might as well not even knock. So they refused to go up there alone, and they told me, and their faces turned white when they were telling me, about how they had seen so many spirits up there on those top 2 penthouse floors of Howard Hughes. They described them as shadow people and as an old decrepit man with white hair, white beard, and looking and like in a bluish type smock, almost like a hospital man. That is known to be Howard Hughes. At one point, Howard Hughes then gets carted out of here after he did all this, bought all these places, built them up, and then he sold them all and left for the Bahamas and Mexico and died like a year or 2 later.
Oh.
So the clashing ghosts of Frank Sinatra and Howard Hughes are here.
As we strolled past a gorgeous flower-bedecked fountain, Spooky Steve couldn't resist telling us one more suicide story.
Apparently, since this was built, 97, 96, 97, 98, since then, over 30 people committed suicide here. It's all covered up, except for this one guy. He somehow lost all his money here, and he got up where those fake bushes are up there below the dome, and he started crawling around up there and fell right into the fountain, head first, did a header, cracked his head in a million pieces, died, and the water that you see flowing there was flowing red. Now, it's known that every once in a while that the guy tells me that the water will flow red in the middle, late at night, and that these statues will start glowing here, and that these will start shaking like this, as if somebody's riding around on them. He's also told me that in these grids right here, see those grids running along here?
Yeah.
And then they're also here, I believe that's the air conditioning vents hidden as art. He told me that sometimes he sees faces from behind those grids looking at him. And they don't look particularly human either. He described them as very grayish, greenish, and then one of them looked like he saw bright, glowing red eyes. Now, the management also told me, one of the, I can't say who, they'll get in trouble, but they told me that about 4 or 5 months ago, a gentleman that worked here became disillusioned for one reason or the other. They never found out why. But this is one of the few places that has a few balconies, but they're way up on the 48th and 47th and 48th floor for the high rollers. And he was an employee here. He got access to one of those rooms on the 48th floor and did a header right next to the pool. Nobody even knew until the next morning, where they found him splatted into a million pieces right next to the pool. His spirit is known to haunt that room and the pool. And this place is, I mean, right now I'm feeling a little something. It's not particularly demonic or anything, but these spirits are here and they're not happy. I feel very unhappy spirits here. So this is a place that was built right primarily over the golf course, where the bodies were built as well. So here you have all these layers of history. I mean, who even knows? Who knows how many Indians were buried here, or if this was a ceremonial ground? Because just about a mile and a little less than a mile that way is the last reservation of the Paiute Indians here in this area, and there's only like less than 75 of them left. So who knows that? Then you have all those other periods of time, including the bouncy house, and then you have the mafia victims. You have regular up to the modern day suicide victims, murders, accidents, natural deaths. All of these collide.
And that was our introduction to the Spooks of Sin City. Spooky Steve was just great. He had a wealth of knowledge on both the history of Las Vegas and the hauntings to be found hiding behind the neon and the glitz. I called my other sister to come pick us up, and Spooky Steve waited with us until she pulled up. He didn't just abandon the out-of-towners in the middle of the strip after the tour was over, and we surely appreciated that. If you ever find yourself headed to Vegas, take a break from the slot machines and look up Spooky Steve. His tours are fantastic, delightfully informative, and spooky. It's all in the name. And tell him you heard of him on Lights Out. He'll be tickled. In the next episode, we'll chat with Spooky Steve a bit more about the unique challenges of doing paranormal investigation in big cities. Join us as we chat more about ghost hunting in the city when we go Lights Out.